Aging used to be a matter of guesswork. You'd look in the mirror, count the gray hairs, maybe wince at the morning stiffness, and hope your insides were aging a little more gracefully than your forehead.
But now,
Aging is getting measurable. Thanks to new advances in biomarkers, those molecular fingerprints in your blood and tissues, we're no longer limited to asking how old are you? The real question is, how fast are you aging? Emerging science is beginning to unmask the body's biological age, an estimate of how worn out your cells and systems are, independent of how many birthdays you've had. And the gap between your biological and chronological age can be as wide as a decade or more in either direction. Some 50-year-olds have the molecular profile of 35-year-olds. Others carry the cellular exhaustion of someone well into their 60s. And this matters, not just because it's fun to brag about, but because biological age is proving to be a far better predictor of future health, disease risk, and even lifespan. So, how exactly do you test it? Let's start with protein signatures. Your blood is teeming with thousands of proteins, many of which shift subtly with age. In recent studies, researchers have identified specific panels of proteins that spike or dip in predictable patterns, especially during the midlife inflection point around age 45 to 55. These protein profiles can now be mapped using high-throughput assays, turning your blood into a kind of molecular age scanner. The presence or elevation of certain proteins, often involved in inflammation, tissue breakdown, or immune dysfunction, can tip scientists off that your body is moving out of the maintenance phase and into early decline, years before you feel anything wrong. Then there's the epigenetic clock, arguably the gold standard in aging science. This test doesn't look at your DNA itself, but at how your DNA is used, specifically whether certain chemical tags, called methyl groups, are silencing or activating genes that govern repair, growth, or decay. Pioneered by researchers like Steve Horvath and Morgan Levine, these clocks can now predict biological age with uncanny accuracy, and better still, they're trainable. That's right. Early data shows that lifestyle changes, from diet to stress reduction to sleep, can reverse some of the age acceleration picked up by your epigenome. You may not turn back time in a Hollywood sense, but your cellular processes might start behaving more youthfully. Another frontier is metabolomics, the science of analyzing the small molecules in your blood, things like amino acids, lipids, and sugars that reflect how well your body is processing energy, fighting inflammation, or repairing damage. Since metabolism is deeply intertwined with aging, shifts in your metabolomic profile can reveal whether your cells are thriving or floundering. For instance, a rise in certain fatty acids or a drop in mitochondrial intermediates might signal that your energy systems are starting to sputter, even if you're still showing up to spin class twice a week. What's wild is that all of these tools, protein clocks, epigenetic clocks, metabolomic profiling, are now becoming commercially available. That means you can mail in a vial of blood or a cheek swab and get back a multi-page report telling you your true age, how fast you're aging, and how you compare to others in your cohort. These tests are still evolving in accuracy and clinical utility, but they're no longer science fiction. They're here, and they're making midlife feel a whole lot more like a crossroads than a plateau. But what do you actually do with this data? Let's say you find out your biological age is 6 years older than your calendar suggests. Do you panic? Not necessarily. In fact, that might be the best-case scenario, because now you've got a chance to course-correct before the symptoms catch up. A growing body of evidence shows that biological age is responsive to intervention. Caloric moderation, resistance training, sleep restoration, anti-inflammatory diets, glycemic control, and even targeted supplementation, think NAD+ precursors, omega-3s, or polyphenol, can slow or reverse some of the biomarkers associated with early aging. There's also a psychological edge to knowing. Once you see that your immune markers are shifting or your mitochondrial metabolites are tanking, it becomes a lot harder to ignore the late-night stress snacking or the skipped workouts. Data can act like a mirror, unforgiving, maybe, but honest. And sometimes, that's what you need to prioritize the boring stuff that keeps you younger longer. We've entered an era where midlife is no longer a vague demographic box. It's a metabolic turning point that can now be measured in molecules. And while you can't change your birth certificate, you can change how fast your body's clock is ticking. The key is knowing where you stand and what levers to pull when things start accelerating. So yes, you can test your aging timeline. And for those willing to peek behind the curtain, It might just be the most motivating health check you'll ever take. Because aging is inevitable, but speeding it up doesn't have to be.